What's up, everyone, and welcome to X-Ray, our Skeleton Crew after show. I thought the timing on this was hilarious. Amaranth asking, "I'm confused by the poll. What music?" And right when I went live,
I feel like we didn't play that much of it.
it was 15 seconds.
Was it?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
You think I cheated you out of your music?
A little bit.
I think it was 15 seconds, but that's what I rendered out. Uh, but each week we've been choosing different piratey music because Molly doesn't think my music is piratey enough. See, I feel like that's epic music.
It is.
Piratey, I don't know.
Well, it's epic. I guess it reminded me of the Pirates of the Caribbean music.
A
A
little
little bit.
bit.
I mean,
It needs to be a little jauntier, I feel.
out of what we can choose from the free YouTube library, which is where I found that, I thought it sounded pretty good.
Well, Jared thinks that my Shire shanty
Oh
song is still
no.
tops. Um, Today we are going to be talking about episode 4 of Skeleton Crew. Can't say I remember no at Aaton. These titles have been kind of long,
I
which
know.
I enjoy them. This is a perfect title for this episode. But yeah, we're going to be talking about that. I also wanted to say up front that we're later tonight going to be on Resistance Broadcasts after show, Galactic Goonies. So we are going to have at some point a time where we have to end the stream, but we're going to try to get through a full discussion of the episode, answer your questions before all of that has to happen. Molly, is there anything else you wanted to mention before we bring our guest on?
I don't think so. Sorry if my voice sounds bad. I'm getting over a cold still, but I have some tea ready to go.
Ready to spill it.
Ready to spill the tea.
Metaphorically. uh, Andy Fing says, "I think your music needs a little more hurdy-gurdy." I
What's
like
that?
that. I think it's Australian for like jauntiness. I don't know.
Jaunty. Okay. That
Uh,
makes sense.
but let's bring our guest on. It's been a while. I think it's been since a Bad Batch episode. I'm not sure, but welcome back to the show, Jordan Maison. Hey, how are you?
Hey, how are you guys?
Doing good.
Doing good.
Was it Bad Batch?
It was Bad Batch. Yeah, I mean, a lot's happened since then, but yes.
Well, great. Let's just start diving into the show. Before we get episode specific, how have you been enjoying it? Because honestly, we started talking about it before we went live, and I was like, we should save this.
Yeah, I mean, I've really have been loving Skeleton Crew so far. I remember when I first started reporting on it long ago, and just something told me that this would be something different, something special. And I tried to not go in with too many expectations when it started, and I've just been blown away by how fun it is.
Something you said about today's or last night's episode specifically was that it felt kind of like a cartoon, and that's something that Molly and I also said, that it felt very much like an episode of the Clone Wars, which I liked a lot.
Yeah, I mean, some of the criticisms, we've all had about some of the Star Wars shows, how they haven't been they don't feel like TV shows, and it's something they obviously have nailed with their animated series, which is why I think we keep coming back to that analogy, is because it just feels like a TV show, and it has all those same beats that makes the animated series work so well in that format as well.
Molly, how did you feel about? I guess we can just go ahead and start talking broadly about episode 4.
I liked it a lot. I don't know if it's my favorite so far. I don't know if I can say which one is my favorite so far, but I did like that this one had a very clear message. It had a very clear lesson that was learned, and it was very, Neil centric, which is always going to be a crowd pleaser for me at least, and for the rest of Neil Nation.
This was my favorite of the bunch. It happens for me for most shows, not just Star Wars, but just any show. I feel like it takes me a few episodes to get into the groove, and I feel like the first 3 were all the setup. Like Jod wasn't fully a part of the team until the end of 2, and really episode 3 was kind of his full introduction. But once they all came together and they clearly had their next step on finding at Aaton. Like this episode was front to back, just like perfect for me. It's exactly what I was hoping the show would be. So I hope they keep that up in the coming weeks. But we have been asking our guests, we're bringing back the sketches, so we're going to get ready to do that. I wanted to show, we've also been showing off community sketches. People tag us on Blue Sky or Twitter. I don't know where Molly set all that up, but hashtag skeleton sketches. So we got one from last week from Jedi Donnie, which is Will with a gun, which I did think that was something this show is doing really well. Is or I guess this is this week, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is it this week or last? Well, like
I think the drawing might have been from last week, but I think he did it this week.
I thought that was a recreation of Neil's moment in episode 3 when he picks up Jod's blaster and his eyes go wide and he puts it back down.
Yeah.
Which I think this show has really been nailing just subtle, not just subtle comedy moments, lots of subtlety. Like especially with Neil, they're able to get so much comedy, but also like fear and emotion through this animatronic mask, which is wild to me.
We keep seeing him do these little things like slightly off screen or in the background, and so now I'm like actively looking for what he's doing in the background. He's kind of a scene stealer now, which I'm fine with.
Yeah, it's one of the many impressive things that kind of, you know, I've touched on it in other stuff I've written about it before, but it's so much about Skeleton Crew manages to feel seamless. You know, it's very much reminds me of, you know, I always hate going to like, oh, it's just like the originals, but it reminds me of that effortless world building that the originals had, where you just believed that these aliens existed and were characters and were doing things, and you know, you have stuff going on in the background. It's not just what's happening with the main people on the screen. You have all these little things that are happening that just make the world feel real and alive, and it's something that you know, some of the shows have struggled with, or you know, they take themselves so seriously that they don't allow for those type of things to really flourish. And it's been so fun to see that. And I love, because we've talked, you know, lots of fans have talked for years about getting an alien as a main character, and now we see how well it can work. Even though he, you know, I mean, we hardly ever see his mouth, but we get tons of expressions and nuance out of them. It's really impressive.
I was going to bring that up. Molly has said, like, before the show started, she was like, I'm a little worried because you can't see Neil's mouth. But yeah, he is so expressive. And like, he shows fear by like wiggling his trunk, or
he makes the little trunk noises too.
Yeah.
Yes.
I like what you said about it being seamless. I feel like the show, like technologically, is kind of a celebration of crafts that Star Wars has used throughout history. And they're just choosing the right tool for each moment instead of, like Obi-Wan Kenobi, it kind of felt like we're going to use the volume because we have it. And also it was like being shot during COVID and there were all these restrictions, but Skeleton Crew is like, yeah, we'll use the volume, but we're also going to use like this animatronic head. Like Neil himself, it's like, it's either fully CGI or a puppet head or a mix. They've got just full on puppets. SM33 is a puppet for so much of it.
Yeah.
We know that stop motion is coming. And it's like, I love that they're taking all these different tools to craft this one story.
Yeah, and they're using them so well. I mean, none of it feels gimmicky or just because. Like it really, all the stuff they've used goes to enhance what they've created. You know, we've seen the criticisms. I've made the criticisms of, you know, using certain things just for nostalgia's sake because, oh, hey, we did this before. This is cool. But here's like, I mean, you've got directors that really know how to use these tools and want to use them to enhance the story and the world.
Yeah. Before we get to our drawings, we had one more sent in from Don Rice. This one was from today. Very cute.
I love this.
Awesome.
Yeah, Neil
yeah, that's awesome.
That was such a cute scene too. The two
Yeah.
of them and him scooting over.
I'm going to talk a lot about that scene when we get there.
I was like, he's just like me for real.
Yeah. I'll go ahead and show my drawing because it is kind of connected to what we just saw. It's also celebrating Neil and Hana, but I drew their final moment together. Him with a little kiss and her just doing a backflip off of a rock because she can.
Parkour.
I feel like that is such a great way to make sure he's never going to forget me. Like, I kiss him on the cheek, I do a flip. Like, that's so weird, just stunting on him because she can. I loved it.
Such a cute moment. And yes. We might talk about it later, but I was trying to figure out why they were French. I mean, they don't need a reason to be French, but I was like, what's the connection here? And then I started Googling parkour, and I was like, oh my God, parkour started in France and was like a thing. It began in the 80s in France, and I had no idea. So I was like, oh, there's the connection.
All these connections, like it's from the 80s and it started in France.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. There was like a movie that came out that was just like a celebration of French parkour, and I feel like it kind of blew everything up. I can't remember what it was, but
that sounds familiar, but yeah, I can't think of it either.
Or maybe it was just like a YouTube video or something, but I don't remember. I'm trying to remember what Molly drew.
It's not
as much of a masterpiece as normal.
It's not the same level of masterpieces I have been doing. I can't hit it out of the park every week, but I'll go ahead and show it. This was my favorite.
Oh, shut up! That's still good.
No.
Neil learning moment when he gets the courage to save his friends and hit SM33 in the head with a rock.
He looks like he's patiently waiting to be beaten up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he is. He's waiting for, what's his name? Jod to come save him.
It's not a bad masterpiece. Show's masterpiece.
Yeah. That's a really detailed droid.
Thank you.
Jordan, what did you bring for the class today?
All right. So I guess because just the person to draw, I also drew Neil.
Rambo Neil.
Yes, I decided to take it the different direction where if he just fully embraced this resistance, persona because he's in love with, Hana, and he just goes full on Rambo with it.
I love that.
I mean, I think we might see a version of that in the future because we just got kind of like a Chekhov's gun on the top of the school, which we can talk about that in a little bit. But I kind of feel like that has to be on Aaton too.
Oh yeah, yes.
Well, let's start getting into the episode, and I do feel like this episode still raised a lot of questions, but in a good way. I thought that there was great character development. It also moved the plot along where we see, okay, what's the next step towards finding Aaton, but it also kept the mystery surrounding Aaton going right in the opening shots. I'm curious, Jordan, what do you think those satellites are that are in orbit above Akron?
Well, when I first watched, my first thought is they look like the old shield ships from, Heir to the Empire that Lando had. And, I got really excited. I don't know why. When I was a kid, I loved the idea of these shield ships and thought they were great.
Get closer to a star? Is that?
Yes. Lando? Yeah. And so I was like, oh, man, that's cool. But the more I looked at it, I think they're weather satellites. Whatever's making this barrier, which it sounds like all the worlds had them, these jewels had them. It's man-made, and that's what I think those satellites are.
That's my theory for now as well, is that the red lights that you can see in the sky of Aaton are those satellites, but I guess they have been maintained, whereas on Akron they just gave up on it.
Yeah, well, I mean, they said what was it? Kim said that all of them but Aaton had been destroyed. So whatever befell them, I guess it wasn't worth keeping up with those satellites anymore.
And Molly, you had an interesting idea about the autopilot that could also
Yeah.
be related to those satellites.
I am starting to think, now that we've seen the same kind of green, smoky looking nebula around both of these planets, I am starting to think maybe it is part of the man-made features of these satellites. But I also think the satellites have something to do with the autopilot that auto kicked in when they were like bringing the ship in. But because these satellites are not currently like active, or some of them are down, maybe some of them are destroyed, that's how he was able to so quickly take over from autopilot. And I wonder if AT-ATs are all functional, so when ships come in, you can't just override the autopilot. They are bringing you in where they want to bring you so they can check it out.
Maybe that's why it crashed, because they were
Yeah.
trying to override it. I like that. That's good.
Although now that I think about it, I wonder how the Onyx Cinder was able to escape. Maybe they just had the autopilot turned off because no one's been in or out for so long.
Well, they did say something about autopilot, right?
Oh, yeah.
As they were coming out.
Oh, yeah, they did. I just assumed that was the ship, but... Huh. Interesting.
I still wonder if we're gonna see the like whole demolition thing happen. That big button that they said not to press.
Oh, for sure.
That's another Chekhov's gun. We're gonna see whatever that is.
Wim's gonna get to push that button.
I feel like that has...
He better.
Yeah. I feel like that has something to do with why it crashed upside down.
Huh. That's interesting. I hadn't made that connection back to the autopilot that originally took them out.
Yeah.
So yeah, when they got to the planet, was there any part of you that wondered if they really were on Aaton? Because honestly, they kind of got me. I was like, maybe they are home already.
Yeah, I thought at first, I was like, yeah. I mean, even when last week's episode ended, I was like, hey, maybe they'll actually get to it, and it's not necessarily a story about them finding their way home, but what happens when they do. But once they started getting into the planet, and you could see some of the satellites, I had a feeling it wasn't Aaton.
That's my first thought, was like, well, the barrier isn't up all the way around the planet, but I was like, well, we didn't get a great look at the planet itself. Then my second thought was maybe that their part of the planet was just like this, almost like Mandalore, like they live in a bubble, and the rest of the planet had been nuked, which then made me think of Battlestar Galactica. I was like, or maybe this is like fake AT-ATN, or like the real AT-ATN that got destroyed, and so they all like packed up and moved to the new one. I had so many thoughts going through my head at the start of that
one
episode.
had so many like New Caprica vibes.
Yeah.
Once we got down on the ground and saw like how everything looked, and we've already talked about Battlestar connections with is it New Caprica is also behind this
like a nebula
that keeps the Cylons from being able to detect them.
Yeah. So that the barrier seems very much like that. But I guess every single one of these AT-ATN, AT-A2, AT-ACRN, I guess do you think they all have this like suburban look? Are all 9 of the jewels of the Old Republic like these suburban paradises?
I think so. I think it's going back to when you talk about stuff like great works and whatnot, anything government related, generally speaking, if you're going to do something big, that includes multiple things, you tend to keep the same design just to make life easier. Then everybody's on the same page, because you're talking planet-wide construction crews across 9 different planets. It would be beneficial to have a single plan. That way everybody knows across all these different planets, where things are going to be and where things are going to go. I think the key difference is what they were there for. AT-ATN seems to be a bunch of analysts and have something to do with money and finances. So maybe the other planets were focused on something different. They just had
That'd
a
be
similar setup. But it's just like,
you're right that Aaton is the one with like the reputation of being the planet of eternal treasure. So
Mhm.
that gives me kind of like Lost vibes, that maybe every planet had its own purpose. It was like a different experiment or something.
Yeah.
It seems like all the signs are pointing that way. It's just like, I mean, you look at some of the schools around cities and towns and stuff. Some of them are a little bit different, but a lot have similar designs just because it's easier to keep the same all the way across.
Yeah. I know Lacey mentioned that this could be like the bank planet or the treasury planet of a group of planets. So that would be interesting. I highlighted this comment. Maybe this was going to be the gold standard of Republic development. I do like comparing this look that all of these planets might have to like in the 70s and 80s when these suburban towns were being built and like everything looked the same and everything was optimized for what they thought, and it reminds me of that. And bringing up the great work, I wonder if the great work is just, this is what a gated community in space looks like. Like these planets are our gated community, literally gated.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I think you might be onto something there. And just it is like this level of just very let's copy and paste life everywhere.
Mhm.
That does I still think something very shady is going on that we don't fully know about, but that the Old Republic may have tried to do something dumb.
Oh, it's shady as hell, but I mean, and I think that's a big part of it. Like even what you're talking about, Molly, with the track housing, in the 70s and 80s, there were not so nice reasons for that as well.
Mhm.
There was a reason why they wanted everything to look the same and why certain areas were encouraged. My dog's going nuts. Sorry, Mara. Why they were encouraged to look a certain way and have a certain aesthetic and to attract a certain type of person to stay there. That's how they wanted these communities to look. And so, that was the vibe I was getting from them. It was like they started this for a reason. They isolated them for a reason. This is someone's idealized version of what the galaxy should look like, and they don't, and they don't want people that don't fit in with that ideal coming around. And anytime you get to something that's that exclusionary, it can't be good. There's not a good purpose behind it. The intentions, generally speaking, may be good, and they seem like good people there. But once you start, with that mindset, it's tough to shake it.
Yeah, and there's only like a certain number of species there.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to talk about that, but I was going to just bring up, I've said it enough, but that initially I was like, I'm not sure about this suburban aesthetic in Star Wars. I'm totally used to it, and I'm past that because they are using it so well thematically. It does seem like Aaton might be like rooted in fear, and maybe all 9 of the jewels were, that they all tried to hide away, and they didn't want anything to do with like the rest of the galaxy. Like, oh, if they move in, they're just, the whole neighborhood's going to go to hell. It does have that sense. But then, like, I mean, I grew up in the suburbs, and when you grow up there, it's really easy to think that your life is like the norm, and everyone just lives like this. And then once you go, like the supervisor will be an HOA.
I keep thinking of the HOA.
I mean, honestly, like that probably is not that far off base. But then once you get out of your literal bubble, like they live in, and you see like, oh my God, like no, I was just very lucky to be born where I was. And the fact that Neil and Fern and Wim and KB are all on a mirror version of their planet and seeing that it's exactly the same, except these kids have to fight for their lives every day. Like, I thought that they have done so much with that suburban aesthetic that it's working very well for me now.
Yeah.
I was going to bring up your point, Molly, about how we still see it's humans, Athorians, Rhodians, Vazuans, I think they're called. Didn't see any of Neil's species there, but it is like the same groups. Like, I wonder,
they were the first to go.
Oh no.
Yeah, I mean, like,
they were too nice. They were too nice.
Or
Yeah.
maybe that's what happened on this planet, is they didn't have a Neil to show them kindness. And so the rest of them fell apart. But like, it does make me wonder if back then the people of the Old Republic were like, well, these are the best species. Or they're humans and Athorians and Rhodians and Vazuans, and they're going to be allowed in our gated community, and that's it.
Yeah.
We don't want no Deveronians around here.
Not in our gated community. Yikes.
Yeah, right? Space racism. It's been interesting.
Yeah. It reminded me a lot too of, because this show got compared so much early on to Stranger Things, when they first landed and they were like in that like rundown playground, and then they were finding everything that like looks the same but ruined and run down. I was like, this feels like the Upside Down from Stranger Things. Like, everything looks similar but different.
Yeah, I think that was probably on purpose. There is one thing that it seems like is not on at Aaton that was on at Akron, and it's King No Head.
Oh, the statue, yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts about that, Jordan, and why we got to focus on it?
Yeah, I'm real curious about that too, because when it first popped up, I was like, okay, well, they obviously looked up to somebody at some point, and if it's not on at Aaton, it makes me wonder what changed at some point in their history. And part of me wonders, honestly, if at Aaton, whoever's running at Aaton now, didn't have some hand in whatever happened to the others, and is essentially wiping out traces of whoever they are, this mysterious supervisor, and making sure that nobody knows who's who, or can trace it back to any particular one person, which it sounds like there's someone despotic there running things, but it's curious that they aren't putting up statues and banners and stuff of themselves either. Like, they're laying low, which makes you wonder why they're laying low.
Maybe each of the 9 were like iterations of the experiment, and like they were like, let's put a statue in this one. It's like, oh, they went to war, like, no more statues.
Yeah, well, there is a kind of it's not really a statue, it's just like an installation of art in the cul-de-sac where Fern lives. I think it's Fern's house. There's like that big sculpture. So maybe all of their stuff is like sculptures and not necessarily statues commemorating anyone specific.
They swapped out the statues for little art pieces. You're full of good ideas tonight.
Yeah, I mean, and that may go to, like we talked about with every planet having its own purpose. Like, if they are just accountants, essentially, all their stuff would be geared towards more of the, the arts, the humanities, the stuff like that. Whereas, Akron, it may have been a war planet. Their people may have been about, military might.
Yeah, you all develop weapons and stuff.
Yeah, and so they have statues to their military leaders and stuff like that, because that's what their culture would be more about.
It could have been farming too, like all the EOPs being there and being really important. Farming or like agriculture, I guess.
Man, like, it's such a fun thought to me to think about these planets, because like when Kim first said it, they were the jewels of the Old Republic. Your imagination goes wild, as probably all the pirates' imaginations do.
Mhm.
But the idea that, like, yeah, what if this was just like the name of a neighborhood that the Old Republic tried to set up, and it's just like what, Sudden Valley or whatever, a gated community,
Mhm.
and everyone's like trying to get to these neighborhoods that aren't really that great. It was just Old Republic propaganda. Like
Yeah.
that's a fun idea.
They're just like stuck in the past on Aaton because they don't know any different.
Well, what did we think of General Stricks? We got Hana finds all the kids, takes them back to the school where they all live. But yeah, that Stricks dude, he
Maybe
was
I'm
interesting.
maybe I'm jaded, but I was just like immediately I don't trust him. Why is he in charge of all the kids? Like, what's
Well,
going on? But he
it was-
turned out to be fine.
Well, I wouldn't say fine, but compared to some like Bad Batch episodes, I thought back to season 2 where they're on that like desert planet with the mines and all those kids work for the one desperate
Mhm.
tyrant, and like that I was expecting him, Strix, to be a little more manipulative.
Hmm.
He was still kind of crappy because I do think he was using the children
Sure.
as cannon fodder, but he didn't seem like it was something he took pleasure in.
Yeah, I
It,
mean
it
that was
more
his
seemed
daughter.
like that's just the way it is.
That was his daughter, right?
Mhm.
What's her name?
Yeah, Hana.
Hana.
Hana. Yeah, he was interesting, but kind of like you, Mala. I was wary of him at first. You know, anytime you see, you know, a leader in that type of circumstances, you know, my mind always goes, you know, because I grew up with, you know, Mad Max and all those movies. I instantly think of, well, anyone in charge of a group of dystopian warrior survivors probably isn't the good guy. You know, because more often than not they aren't. But you know, I wouldn't say he's necessarily good. I think he's doing the best he can in what's just a really crappy situation. I mean, it seems like the Troiks and the Hattons have been at war for, I mean, longer than any of these people have actually been alive. You know, it
Yeah.
seems clear that it's been a generational thing, and this is all he knows. You know, he was probably the same as Hana. You know, when he was a kid, he was thrown on the front lines, and that's just what he knows.
Yeah, that's the vibe I get too. Just that they're raised to be like, well, the strong survive, and we just treat our kids like adults, which is kind of like the fantasy all kids want. It's like,
Mhm.
just treat me like a grown up, and it's like, but not like that. Not
Yeah, don't send me to war, please.
just like watching it the second time earlier today when he's like, we honor our children here. I'm like, bro, do you? Like, you don't. You give them one ration a day. You let them go hungry if they're too weak to fight. And like, I mean, I think you think you're honoring them by
Mhm.
treating them as grown-ups, but it's like kids need help.
Well, that's why it adds a tinge of hopefulness by the end when, like, I don't mean to jump ahead, but like when she talks to Neil and she's like, I maybe one day when I'm in charge, I will, you know, take your advice. So you think maybe when she grows up and she's in charge, she might try to go more for a peaceful route. And this other guy, the general, he's only doing, like you said, Jordan, like what he knows and what he's done his whole life.
And no one's
Yeah.
ever shown kindness like Neil.
He's never had a Neil come
Right.
and,
Yeah.
you know,
And
inspire
I think
him.
that's a, you know, an excellent point, and something that I've really liked about just the general themes in this show overall is, you know, with this episode specifically, they hadn't even considered that piece of being an option because it's nothing they've ever known. You know, and you know, Neil comes from a planet where they don't know anything about war, so this is all foreign to him. He doesn't, I mean, logically doesn't understand why people have to fight. And so when she's presented with a different idea, you know, it's nice to see that she's considering it as an option now. And, it kind of goes to show how tiny things can have a huge impact. And that's something Star Wars has always been about, is that the smallest spark can start a fire. And what she needed for this world to change was to see kindness from someone else and to actually experience what it was. And we get, so many little moments like that throughout Skeleton Crew that has also really made me enjoy the show.
It reminds me so much of one episode of Avatar: The Last Airbender where there are like two tribes that Aang has to try to get to reconcile.
Mhm.
And it turns out the whole thing was just like a huge misunderstanding generations ago, but these people just decided to keep on hating each other. And like we don't see any actual combat in this episode, so maybe the fighting is way more intense, but since we don't see it, I'm kind of picturing just this weird rivalry that has gotten way out of hand where they're riding around in tanks stealing their EOPs and stuff. But like, it might not be that difficult for one person to just be like, hey, do you want to stop doing this?
Right. Yeah.
Their conversation kind of reminds me of going back to the first episode when Wim is talking to Neil and he's like, don't you ever want to do anything exciting? And Neil is like what? Like, I think by the end of this, Wim will have inadvertently kind of inspired Neil to like take a chance every once in a while, be a little more adventurous.
Since you bring up Wim, I want to talk about kind of the flip side, and I'll bring up this super chat because I'm going to push against it. But Jared says, I'm ready for Wim to be left behind and forgotten.
Oh no.
I feel like
he's our scarecrow of the group. We can't
like,
leave him. He's got to find his brain.
Yeah. Well, I feel like that would also be pushing back against Jared's statement could also apply to Luke Skywalker at the beginning of A New Hope. Like,
yeah.
I just want to go to Tashi Station. Like, he's so whiny, but that's the point, is Wim has to start a little annoying so that he can grow up and have an actual character arc. But I do feel like / hope this whole experience will be a wake-up call for him to not seek out adventure and not always push the green button without thinking. And we see him, he's like so excited to just be like shooting guns, and I'm going to pick up the biggest blaster and like get launched across the room, which is like funny to see Wim do. But by the end, he's like admitting to Fern that, I wouldn't have gotten us this far. I wouldn't know what to do. So I think he's on his journey for growth.
Yeah, that whole scene with him and Fern was incredibly good in general. I know we're jumping ahead.
That's fine. Like,
yeah, that whole scene was good, and yeah, I kind of, when he was pouting at the beginning of the episode about the adventure being over because they thought they were home, I was like, all right, kid.
Right.
It's like you've been kidnapped and almost sold into child slavery like 2 times at this point. Maybe chill out. But yeah, you definitely see some growth out of them. I think them being forced, to scout ahead, really hammered home how real this is. And I think specifically having it set on a planet that looks just like theirs probably made it more impactful than even when they got in trouble on with the other pirates, because they're seeing this is what our home could be if circumstances were different.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wim also goes for the biggest and heaviest gun when they're doing their little like target practice. Yeah. And we see like he's so overconfident, and then he shoots the gun and like it blows him backwards. So slowly but surely he is learning some lessons, I think, to where he will eventually maybe not go in so hard and think a little bit.
He just assumes the best is going to happen every time. Push the green button. What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
I'll pick up the biggest blaster. I'll dial it all the way up. It'll be fine. Like, it's a very privileged kid thinking.
Yes.
Since we got to them like having to scout ahead, and we see how that resolves with Jod, we haven't really talked about Jod and SM33 at all. So we can kind of back up and talk about Jod being 33's little baby. which was a wonderful moment.
That was so cute. The babysitter mode engaged.
Mode, yeah.
Well, I talked about this, so I'll ask you this question first. Do you think SM33 knows he's that funny, or is that just him talking? Like, is he genuinely like, okay, that man is my baby now, come on, baby, or is he trying to rise out of Jod?
I think that's what makes it so good, is that he probably doesn't know that he's, kind of like Fern says it later, he's just a droid. And yeah, we've seen droids with personalities, but ultimately he's doing what he's programmed to do. And that kind of, almost like, the ironic moments with C-3PO come about because, he's not aware of how goofy he is sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what makes him so endearing. And, it just happens to annoy Jod, which is great. But I don't think it's necessarily purposeful. I think he's trying to do exactly what he's being told to do.
Yeah, I think I like seeing Smee interact with the kids versus interact with Jod, because like that scene of them in the corridor where he Smee sulks off and then comes back and is like, I think he likes messing with Jod because Jod is maybe SM33 kind of thinks that Jod might be trying to take advantage or con these kids into something. And
it's like, is he messing with Jod, or did he walk around the corner and go, did I remember to say I? I'm gonna go back and say I.
Maybe. I think, yeah. Who was it that said a little column A and column B? It's a little bit of both.
Yeah. I really liked that scene where he's starting to have his memory come back a little bit, and then the rat pops out, and then his head starts to smoke. Like, A, the puppetry work is super fun, but B, just those little details of his head literally, like, it kind of reminds me of B2 emo, not having the energy to lie. That if I think too hard, my head will start smoking.
Yeah. I saw someone, I forget where it was, on social media today, compare him to the little droid from Treasure Planet.
I've only seen that movie once, and I can't remember the droid.
It's been a while since I saw it, but I think there's like a little droid that is really old and kind of broken.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very, very similar. Yeah.
And
yeah,
it's been a long time since I watched it too, but yes, I love, man, Nick Frost in Star Wars is just such a blessing. And this character just feels so perfect for him. You can tell he's just having a blast, doing it. And that makes a huge difference too. Just everybody looks like they're having a blast making this show.
We've got to find a way to keep 33 alive until the sequel trilogy era, so he and Dunkar Plutt and Edgar Wright's cameo Resistance Fighter can all have a scene together.
Yes.
Yes. A nice little reunion.
But they run into the Hatton and are last we see are being held at gunpoint, and Jod asks them to shoot him. But then the next time we see him, he's walking out of the smoke with all the Eopies. Am I the only one that doesn't fully trust this? Like, I don't know. I don't quite buy his story about just being surrounded and then buying the Eopies. I might be thinking too hard about it.
I personally don't really see the point of him lying. Like, are you saying so maybe he killed them all?
Maybe. And he's just trying, like, I don't know. It just seems like a lot for the Hatton to explain to him. First of all, he was like, just shoot me. And instead they explained, well, your little children friend joined up with our mortal enemies and we stole their Eopies. It's like there's a lot of exposition that was left out of that.
I'm wondering though if they are similar to the way that the general acted. He was pretty honest and upfront and like not super mean or intimidating. So I wonder if the other side is similar and they're just like telling him what was going on, and he offered them a huge amount of money
Yeah.
that they couldn't pass up.
I
And
do
then
wonder
they're-
if he gave them all the credits.
Oh,
didn't
he
sound
absolutely
like-
did not.
Yeah. That
He
seems
probably gave him like 2
Even
and
say a
holding on
couple.
to the rest.
even just one of those, I think they would have been like, here you go, here's the EOPs.
I guess, but because it's relevant, I'll bring up the super chat. Thank you so much, Ultima Bindesen. Why did Jod buy the EOPs in the first place? Did he think they would come in handy?
I think he bought his freedom, and the EOPs came with it.
It's like a package deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I yeah, I think, kind of like one of the early points y'all made about, how at war are these two groups really?
Right.
Like, they hate each other, but are they really warring on each other? Like, it could have just been that easy. It's like, yeah, we hate these guys. We stole their EOPs, and so it may not have been a big deal for them to be like, fine, whatever. We got something out of it, and we pissed them off for a little bit, so we're good now. What's interesting to me is that nobody there wanted the ship. Like,
Yeah,
I figured that would be something, but nobody, like even the people on Aaton, nobody seems concerned with actually getting off planet, which is interesting to me.
Yeah, they said they don't concern themselves with off-worlders.
Except for when they come to trade, which someone asked, like, what would they even want the credits for?
Yeah, they do have people come trade.
Yeah, and
Or
that was a
else-
question I had to have our commenters answer for me. I was like, it's kind of weird that they have like Imperial helmets and Mud Trooper helmets. And it's like, I guess they're getting army surplus from somewhere.
Yeah.
That traders come and drop off some stuff. But yeah, no one seems to care to leave. They're like, nah, we'd rather fight.
They might have ships and they might not leave because they don't have any money. Now they have money, so maybe they'll leave.
But if that were the case, they could have just shot Jod.
But they're not super mean people. I think that's the point. Like, these two factions are fighting, but they're not like slaughtering each other. They're just like stealing each other's
raiding
stuff
each other, and
yeah.
I'm gonna take your horses, and then you're gonna set my barn on fire, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think it's curious that no one really is concerned with leaving this crappy planet.
Yeah.
It's their planet. They got to take care of it.
Sure.
What's left of it.
So after they reunite with Jod, Hana takes them to the Fallen Sanctum, and that was another like just great point of moving the plot along that I liked a lot. Molly, did you want to talk about all the Wizard of Oz vibes you're feeling?
Yeah, I've been getting a ton of Wizard of Oz vibes from the story so far, and just making connections that Wim is our scarecrow, Neil is the cowardly lion, so he just had his big moment, and I feel like this is still a rough theory, but like maybe between KB and Fern, they both might be sharing the Tin Man role, where Fern emotionally needs to use her heart more because she's a little rough and tough. KB, I have a very sad theory that maybe her medical condition has to do with her heart, and so she will have a literal like need for a new heart, maybe, or something like that. Maybe she's
it's
got
not that dire.
No. Maybe she's got a heart murmur or something, but I'm curious to find out more about KB. But anyways, so I've been making a lot of connections to the characters and their respective Wizard of Oz characters, but then we have the part of the wizard in the tower, which I think we'll eventually see who that is or what that is at Aaton. Whoever the supervisor is.
Jordan, was it you that chimed in on someone's post about it being a holocron?
Yes.
Saying it should be a Motobus.
Yes. I mean, if that's what they're going to do, that would be the one to go with. But, I mean, I like that. The Wizard of Oz analogy seems very on point with that. And I wonder if that would make Jod Dorothy. Like, he has to find himself, and, he's out of his element, because he doesn't like kids. He's not used to him, so he's in a whole different world dealing with these kids, but he's having to find himself through it. So that's really cool analogy. But yeah, I think this mysterious supervisor, whoever's at the top of the tower, is pulling the strings here. My initial thought, and I know it's not uncommon, is almost like on Wall-E, where the artificial intelligence takes over, makes the humans think they're still in control, but has essentially taken over all their functions.
Mm-hmm.
But that seems too, I don't know, there's a lot of whimsy with this show, and that seems too straightforward. But based off how the droids react, I could see it being an AI thing.
Yeah, the droids are definitely sus. And I kind of like that idea that, back when the Old Republic was first developing this idea, that'd be like, oh, we'll make life super easy for everyone that lives there. And the supervisor will just be someone that can control every aspect of their life and they'll love it.
Yeah, and it turns out to just be a droid running a program.
It did when they entered the sanctum, and it has all those pillars, and it also like kind of pans up to something on the ceiling.
Yeah.
That at first I might not have thought that it was anything, but this show has been doing a lot of cool stuff with callbacks. Like in this scene, everything with Fern and SM-33, Fern realizing, oh, he's a droid and I can do to him what I did to my droid, like calling back the memory override. And then the reveal that, Molly, you pointed this out to me when we were watching, or right after we watched it, that SM-33's line about can't say I remember no at Aaton, it sounds like just a piratey thing to say, but
he literally can't talk about it. He's
literally trying to say like, no, I can't say it. Like that's such solid writing.
Yeah, I love that so much.
That whole sequence was one of my favorite parts of the scene, or of the episode. It's probably between that and Neil talking to Hana up on the rooftop, but that whole revelation of like him spilling everything and then being like, also now I'm going to tear you apart.
Yeah,
and it's legit. Yeah, it's legit scary, and that's what I thought was great. And I know some people think it's weird. It's popular to not like Stranger Things, just even before all the stuff with some of the actors came out. But that I love, though you think of those old 80s shows or movies that are focused on kids, but they have these like legit terrifying moments that shocks you and stick with you because they seem so out of place, but they remind you that there are real stakes here. Even though they're just kids, that bad things can happen. And this whole sequence was impressively handled. I mean, he got real menacing real fast. It was crazy.
Yeah, when his voice changes and like gets real low and gnarly sounding, that was really scary. And I loved that this might be our first ever, I don't know what the camera shot is called, but it looks like when somebody's wearing a GoPro pointed at their face. That might be our first Star Wars shot like that in Star Wars. And I was trying to think if we've had anything like that before, but I'm such a camera nerd. I got excited by that.
No, now that you mention that, I can't think of one either. But that's another, like we were talking about. They use all these different elements and tools, even things we're not used to seeing in Star Wars, but they managed to still make it work.
Yeah, it reminded me of, there's a weird shot in episode 1 from C-3PO's point of view, looking down at Anakin and kind of like looking around. It's kind of like the opposite of that.
Yeah, that shot always jumps out at me in episode 1. I'm like, this is so strange, because Star Wars usually doesn't do stuff like that.
You don't see POV shots like that, not from droids.
Well, what do you think is next, Jordan? Because we now know that 33 has the coordinates in his head. So what do you think their plan is to extract that? Or are they going to just leave him turned off?
Well, I assume they'll turn him back on at some point. and he'll probably they'll have to. I think KB will be on top of dealing with that. Finding a way around his kill switch so that they can talk to him. But in the meantime, they got to do something. But what's interesting is they're in a room filled with coordinates for all these other planets, and if they are all laid out the same, they could feasibly go to a different one, find that tower, and maybe one of those towers the coordinates aren't wiped off for Aaton. So I think that might be kind of what we see next is they try out a different planet in the hopes that because Smee being there on that one, he didn't mention that he'd been to the other ones, so maybe he didn't destroy the other ones and they can still get information from those.
I
think
that
Smee
a
will
lot.
be a backup plan, or when they're able to get him back online, they may already have the information they need, but then they can, because at some point, the pirates got to catch up with them, and it seems like while they're planet hopping, trying to find intact coordinates would be a good time for the pirates to get on their trail.
I am curious to see how the pirates get back on their trail.
I like the idea of them trying to go to another one of these planets to find another version of the tower and see if they can find the coordinates intact. I think we might be headed, I don't know if it's going to be the next episode, but we know that there's like a fancy place on a snowy planet that kind of looks like a big resort. And I know the pirates get there. So and I know like they catch up to them at that point because we see all of the pirates and them on this planet. So maybe there's something KB needs to fix SM33 because I think she's probably going to be the one to work on him.
I guess I'm kind of hoping they don't just go to another Jewel of the Old Republic. Unless it looks different again to what at Akron looked like. As long as they keep mixing it up. I love that, Kim gives them a list and then they go and it's the wrong planet, but that gives them more knowledge. And then now we have to figure out how to pull stuff out of Smee's head, that every new challenge is unique. I'm enjoying that pattern. I did want to bring up from the Real Code Black. Thanks so much for the super chat. They should take off his head and just carry him around like Murray the Demonic Skull from Monkey Island. I think that will probably happen because John Watts and Christopher Ford have talked about Monkey Island being something that inspired them for this show. And that does make sense to just be like, okay, let's pop his head off real quick so he can't tear us apart, but we can still talk to him.
Oh, that's funny.
That might be the only safe way to do it.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna like look back in the trailer shots and see if anyone's carrying a bag with like something shaped like a head in it.
Well, I think we've reached the end of the episode. Is there anything anyone else wanted to bring up?
I think that's all I had.
Yeah, I'm looking over my notes here. There's something, I mentioned on social, one of the things with Jod is that Jude Law is just so good and manages to strike that perfect balance between, I don't care and, genuine sincerity. Like, I think one of my favorite moments is when Neil gives him a hug and he doesn't push him away. Like, it seems like something he would have done. Like, he didn't have to rescue the kids, even though, yes, it's questionable about him stealing the credits and stuff like that. He could have just left them there. And it feels like at some point he may have. So, it's nice to see that. And for me, I hate to keep going back to these, original trilogy, references, but it feels like the most Han Solo character we've gotten since Han Solo. Like, Star Wars has always tried to replicate that just pure cool factor Harrison Ford always brought to the character. And, it doesn't always work. But Jude Law, even though they're vastly different characters, is really making it work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I agree. And I think a lot of Jude Law's acting is so subtle and it works so perfectly in every moment. I do kind of, however, think that we're being lulled into like this false sense of security with him, because when Neil goes to hug him, he immediately grabs Wim and hugs Women because he's like, Wim likes me, I know that.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna make this look like a big group hug with the two of them. And I was like,
Yeah.
So at some point we are going to, I think, see him do something to lose some of the trust with these kids. And then, we'll all have to learn that lesson when we get there. But yeah, some of his actions seem genuine and some of them seem a little bit performy. But either way, I think he'll get there eventually.
That's I'm distrustful of the whole. It all felt very convenient that he just happened to come strolling out of the mist with the EOBs. But I would buy that he feels that he needs the kids to get to Aaton, so he's got to do whatever it takes to get them, not necessarily for them. But he did earn some trust with Fern. Like, she was surprised about all that. So I'm with you, Molly, that I don't trust him. I still think there's going to be a moment where he's going to upset them, but then he'll realize that he actually cares about them and he's going to do the right thing eventually.
Eventually.
Yeah. But Jude and all the kids have just been so good in this show.
When SM33 is telling the story of what happened on Akron and how his captain killed his entire crew and everybody who was there to hear about, the camera went to Jod. And I was like, Jod is listening intently to this information, and Jod is going to have to learn a lesson that captain didn't, because that captain was obviously being super selfish, and Jod is still acting pretty selfish, and he'll get to a point in the show where he needs to put aside his selfishness and not kill his whole crew, or not find a way to screw his entire crew.
It is. I keep forgetting the kids don't currently know that he is one of the pirates. They just know he's not a Jedi, and that he kind of sort of lied about it. So there's still that. But yeah, I wanted to praise all the kids too. And our friend Alden was talking about how all these kids are in a scene with Jude Law, and he's never like stealing the spotlight from them. That they're all crushing it. I was so impressed with Fern and Neil, especially today.
Fern is just, she's gonna go far in her career. she's got a bright future. I think all of them do. I mean, this isn't there's some cringy moments in general, but it's because they're kids. It's very intentional. It's not like, oh, it's just bad wooden acting because they're kids. No, anything that comes off as goofy or cringy is obviously very intentional. And to be able to make it intentional but still feel natural is just very impressive.
There was a line from Wim that got me really good when he's like, are you a group of kids fighting for control of the planet against the adults? Or like someone grabs him in the middle of that, and the way his voice like stutters as he's being grabbed felt so real. And then later on, Neil says, like, if you don't stop raiding each other, do you even ever think it'll end? And just adding like even in there, which may have just been a mistake on his part, but I'm like, that feels like a little kid trying to get a profound thought out.
Well, and that reminds me, even with Hana, the way she's always doing these little parkour moves when there's no need for it, like in the bus when she just slides down and then pops up 5 feet later. It's like,
and Wim's
okay,
still like, whoa,
yeah, and it's like, this is exactly what a kid who wants to look like a badass would do. You would just randomly throw out these moves and be like, hey, yeah, I'm cool. And it just, even though she's been forced to, be a soldier as a kid, she still has these kid tendencies and acts like a kid. I was like, that's why I love those little moments, even the flip at the end, which was so ridiculous, but so cool.
I don't know if this was intentional or not, but I did notice on our second watch that when Neil is about to faint, Wim runs up and slides over to him just
Yes.
like she does. And so I'm like, oh, did he just pick that up from her? And now he's like, I'm going to slide around now.
He also slid into his garage, I think. He did like a little barrel roll when in the first episode when,
yeah.
when he was late for school.
Yeah,
God.
true.
Yes.
Another thing Hana did that was like, oh, here's the kid in her coming out, is when she takes Neil to show him the big gun. She's like,
God, that was so fun.
She's like, you know what? You're right. This is kid stuff. Let me show you the big gun.
That got the biggest laugh out of me for this episode of just like, all right, well, let me show you what I'm going to show you, and just this massive cannon.
Yeah, and that's going to come back into play. Like, we'll see it, or maybe no one else really knows where it is on Aaton, but now Neil knows where that big gun is.
That would be hilarious. Like, I kind of assume the adults don't know about it, but Neil's gonna have to run upstairs to his own school and like unlock the giant cannon.
God,
We're
yes.
like, we all thought it was a telescope.
Yes, Neil bringing the biggest gun to the fight is going to be amazing. Yes.
That's when your drawing will come to life.
Yeah. Well, with that, I think we will let our guest go. But before you do, where can everyone follow you online and just let people know what you're all about?
Well, I'm online pretty much everywhere these days, unfortunately, until we settle on a better alternative. Settle on one alternative. But it's I've kept it real simple. You just type in my name as you read it right here, Jordan Maison with an I, and you'll be able to find me pretty quick. I try to be active. I'm mostly active on Blue Sky these days, just because it's nicer. I don't have to yell as much on there, which is nice. Yeah, it's nice. It's nice to be able to post. I made a comment about Acolyte the other day, and I wasn't immediately swamped with stuff. It's kind of nice. But you can also find me just about everywhere. I am, I made the announcement a while ago. I'm winding things down for myself at Cinelinks. That's where you can read most of my stuff right now. I'm stepping back. I have a great new editor-in-chief taking my place while I back up and I kind of try and do some more other stuff. Maybe seeing me elsewhere at other places I can't quite discuss just yet. And try and do more things like this with you guys that I've always wanted to do more of. So you'll still be seeing me around, just won't be as much, on Cinelinks. Another reason for stepping back is I'm retooling the Real Outreach charity to get that where I want it to be. Hit some of my goals there. Find some new strategies when it comes to fundraising. I want to do some telethon style type fundraising and have fun with it, and that requires
what Real Outreach is.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I guess I should do that. Real Outreach, we're all about bringing the joy of movies to kids who normally can't. We set up screening events and take for recent releases, not old stuff, but stuff in the theaters. And we take big groups of kids from various organizations, whether it's Boys and Girls Clubs or advocacy groups for kids that are, homeless or have other problems at home, and we take them to a night at the movies. We give them, gift cards for concessions. That way they can just enjoy a movie and be a normal kid for a couple hours and not think about anything else. We've been doing it for a few years now, and it's been going good. We're doing we also put together gift baskets, movie themed gift baskets for kids in the hospital around Christmas time, which I'm actually doing drop off Saturday. And just stuff like that. But I want to, as much as I love it, I want to expand, beyond my area here. Most of it's pretty local or within an hour or two of me. And, there's a lot of kids all over the country that need the joy of movies and can't experience that. And I want to expand that more, hit up other cities. I've, I've talked with a few hospitals on getting, we have our own projector and theater set up that we could go into a hospital and let the kids that are stuck there experience some movies as well. And so, it's just getting all that organized is a lot for one person. So that's kind of why I'm stepping back, so I can focus on that, getting it where I want to be, bringing in some new help and stuff like that. But that's going to be my focus into the new year as I wind down from Cinelinks. But I'll still be around.
Yeah, that's awesome. That sounds great.
That's awesome.
Well, we're gonna let you go and enjoy the rest of your night. But thanks for hanging out and chatting.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Have a great rest of your night.
All right, you too.
Bye, Jordan.
We are gonna stick around and answer your super chats and your questions. Before we do that, we're gonna take a quick 1-minute break because today's stream is sponsored. So we're gonna run that Factor ad and we'll be right back.
Notice how the days are shorter, but your to-do lists aren't? Power through your busy days with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. From breakfast to dinner and anything in between, Factor has easy, nutritious options to keep you fueled and feeling your best. Whether you like routine or enjoy mixing things up, Factor has you covered with 35 different delicious meals every week and over 60 additional convenience options you can add to your box, like keto cookies, pressed juices, and smoothies. Don't let shorter days slow you down. Stay energized with America's #1 ready-to-eat meal delivery service. Factor lets you do you. Choose from 6 menu preferences to help you manage calories, maximize protein intake, avoid meat, or simply eat well balanced. Because Factor's meals are chef prepared and dietitian approved, you're gonna love not only how Factor's meals taste, but also how they support your goals. And Factor is cheaper than takeout and dining out. Put the money you save towards holiday shopping or reaching your financial goals. Stay on your A-game with quality ingredients you can trust and quality you can taste in every one of Factor's fresh, never frozen meals. Use your time more efficiently during these dark months. Let Factor take shopping, prepping, cooking, and cleaning off your daily list of things to do. Head to factormeals.com/50starwars and use code 50starwars to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code 50starwars at factormeals.com/50starwars to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping while your subscription is active.
And we're back. Both made it back in time.
We didn't go anywhere.
I know, I'm just kidding. I saw someone ask if we'd be back in time.
Yeah, normally we're jumping off to go downstairs to get stuff, but that's it.
You already have your tea.
I got my tea.
And I'll read all the questions to give your voice a continued break.
Thank you.
Our first one came in from Danamaniac. Thank you so much. Preemptive Merry Christmas, everyone. Absolutely loved the huge Fallout vibes of episode 4. Neil got to shine and Jod was in full dad mode by the end. I've seen a lot of people talking about the Jewels of the Old Republic as like vaults where they're just stuck in these. Well, I guess it's just at Aaton now, but they're basically vault tech people.
Mm-hmm. Everything, it does have a lot of 80s vibes, obviously, but it does also kind of have like the 50s vibes that Fallout kind of had.
I think like a lot of the Suburban stuff popped up around in the 50s and like kept on building up steam.
Yeah.
Through the,
and a lot
the
of
70s and 80s.
A lot of the design choices feel like that era.
Yeah. David Canyo says, Hasbro, can we get a Neil plush already, please? Yeah, I'm surprised they don't have those ready to go.
They had Funko Pops. They had the Black Series. I've already got a Neil t-shirt that I forgot to put on for the stream, but it's hot in here, so I'm glad I didn't wear it. Yeah.
You wore it in our reaction.
I did. Yeah. If you're on our Patreon, you can see it over there. I need a plushie. I need all the Neil things. I'm obsessed.
I've got that Max Rebo, like old. It was basically a Beanie Baby knockoff. We could just throw some red overalls on it, and that could be close enough. I'll get tiny red corduroy overalls for you.
That's so cute.
Arya Binya says, do you think Farah will tell Fern about Ray's parents at the end of Skeleton Crew Season 1? Molly, say Palpatine connection, please. Get well, Neil? There's
no Palpatines.
No Palpatines up in here. I'm good with not around here, pardon.
None of him or his clones are welcome here.
Yeah, I would be
or Rey's parents. Get out of here.
Dathan, what are you doing here? I would be perfectly fine if this show continues to be very tenuously connected to the rest of the Mandoverse. Like, I won't be surprised if there is some sort of connection. I don't think the Mandalorian is going to take over for a whole episode or something, but I do think that it will be firmly within the Mandoverse when this is over, but I do not need this show to explain more about Palpatine's clones or anything like that. I'm perfectly happy to just have this be a bunch of kids on an adventure.
What do we need explained?
I mean, I have questions, but I just don't need them answered here.
Right. Like that Palpatine and his story has connections to so many of the other shows that we're getting in Star Wars. Let's just leave it out of this one.
We got enough from me back in Bad Batch season 3 that gave me my fill for now. I still think there are some gaps and questions that I would love answered, but not here. Like, I'm having a good time just with these kids, and I don't need them to get like, oh, oops, we accidentally stumbled into this cloning vault. Scotty Heron, thanks so much for being a member of the 603rd. Still watching the episode because I got home late yesterday, but about halfway through, and Hana grabbing Neil's trunk made me rewind, then yell, rude. Yeah, I can't decide if that's rude or cute.
Yeah, I can't either. It's just, it looks so grabbable. I don't blame her. I want to give his snoot a little boop.
He didn't really say either way. He seemed annoyed. I expect he was probably annoyed by that, but if she truly has never met one of Neil's species, maybe she was like, I'll just lead you this way.
I mean, he's got hands. I think she was being cute.
I mean, I guess that's like her, the strong survive.
Mm-hmm.
We're always showing off how strong we are. And so I'm just going to grab your nose.
Yeah. Seemed a little flirtatious.
Jurud Oulette says, I think all the planets are artificial/fake. I mean, in a sense, I think that there's like a facade. I don't know exactly what you mean by fake. Like, I think Aaton is working as it should be, but it's definitely hiding something. It's a facade for something.
Yeah, the entire planet is operating as if the rest of the galaxy doesn't matter, and they're operating the same that they have been for who knows how long. So there are things about it that are artificial, but I don't think the planet itself is like fake.
Yeah. I think Aaton is the last one operating as it was intended to. I wanted to bring this up because I think it's funny, but I said it would be hilarious if a bunch of kids messed up Palpatine's plans. And I'm like, they just did that in the Bad Batch. Omega let out the Zillo Beast.
Yeah.
So a bunch of kids did mess up Palpatine's plans.
That happens constantly.
These meddling kids.
Why do you think Palpatine started putting Force-sensitive babies away, far away? He hates kids.
Get them out of here. Hamish K, thank you so much for the super chat. Treasure Island is for sure having a large influence on this show. Captain Silver and their home is the Treasure Island itself and other stuff. So we only saw this about a year ago, right? I think we watched it around when Ahsoka was coming out because people were also saying big Treasure Island vibes with Ahsoka.
The like spherical ball
map.
The
map ball.
and
Ahsoka. I mean, they were right. Like that map that they pull out on Cetos. But yeah, this too. And Captain Silvo is definitely, I think, named for Captain Silver or Long John Silver.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like taking all these kids under his wing, and then they'll find out he's been a pirate all along, and they'll be mad at him.
Yeah.
Someone did a thread, I think back in episode 1 and 2 that was just like, here are a bunch of famous pirate characters in literature and then who they seemingly inspired in this show. And I think Vane is named after a classic pirate. Wim is probably named after William from Treasure Island.
Mhm.
Oh, and here I like Hamish said Treasure Island, and I kept saying Treasure Planet, but similar story.
Oh yeah. We just kept thinking of Treasure Planet because we were trying to think of that character from the movie.
Yeah. Arya Binya also says KB is Tion Solisar from Legends, Fern Palpatine. I don't remember Tion Soliasar.
Soliasar.
I am not familiar with her. Oh, one of Luke's first students.
Mm.
Didn't mean to bring that up yet, but I don't think these kids have any Legends connection. But I like this one. Maddie Gunner just said, Neil's about to go home and tell everyone about his girlfriend from a different school on another planet.
Neil has a Canadian girlfriend.
Yeah. I love that.
Oh my gosh. That is really... Well, what about Runa?
I know.
I don't think he would stop trying to pursue Runa just because he had a little peck on the cheek from Hana.
I agree. I think maybe this whole experience could give him the courage just to talk to Runa.
Oh yeah.
Because Wim said, like, but you never talked to her. So
he's working
when Neil
up
gets
to
back, it's kind of like Samwise going
Mhm.
on all of Lord of the Rings and coming back and being like, well, I'm going to go talk to Rosie Cotton and get married right now.
Neil's going to go get back to Aaton and propose to Runa on the spot.
Immediately. She's like, what are you doing, you weirdo?
Her little lisp is so cute.
Jared Ouellette says, what would each kid take for their Pokemon starter? Okay, so
Oh.
here's where our knowledge is going to fail us, because I only know the main 3, 4 if you
Fern.
include Pikachu.
Fern is going to take Charmander.
Ooh, okay. We're going to include Pikachu in this. First of all, fully agree with you on Charmander. Pikachu would be taken by Wim because he
Mhm.
slept in and didn't get to choose his starter when he was supposed to, which is exactly what happens to Ash in the anime.
Oh, cool.
I don't know if
like
he
that.
slept in, but he was late, and Pikachu was all that was left. So
Neil is Bulbasaur? Maybe? What's the other one?
Squirtle.
Squirtle.
Hmm.
Oh. Maybe Neil's Squirtle.
I mean, I was Squirtle.
That's the water one, right? He
Uh-huh.
likes bubble baths.
That's true. Yeah, I don't have a great connection for KB and Bulbasaur yet, but that
Bulbasaur
is
has an accessory.
on his back. I mean, so does Squirtle. Well,
Yeah.
eventually. He has like those guns coming out of his shell. I will say that I'm still kind of just waiting for more about KB. She is still the character that has gotten the least screen time, script time. I like her. I love that. Like, I really liked that moment today where she was shooting all the cans and then Wim had to like show her what a high five was.
Yeah.
Seeing these kids becoming friends, I'm all for that, but I just want more Fern time.
Mm-hmm.
She reminds me of Echo in the Bad Batch right now, where Echo just kind of like didn't get that much to do for a while.
See, she reminds me of Tech, and
Well, yeah,
Tech also didn't have a whole lot to do up until kind of the end there.
Tech and Echo in season 1 were the 2 characters that were like, kind of wish they had more to do. In
Yeah.
season 2, Tech got a pretty strong focus.
Oh,
But yeah, I see what you're saying. Oshi Bashar says, Tamali's Wizard of Oz analogy, I think KB may be Scarecrow because it appears she may have a brain condition, and Fern is the Tin Man because she is a little bit heartless. We definitely have... Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
That is totally possible. I have found myself finding my own reasons to assign different Wizard of Oz characters to different kids because there's more kids than there are Wizard of Oz characters. But yeah, I mean, I think that could also work. I think it'll make more sense when we find out what it is that KB is dealing with and just get to know her a little bit better. But
Yeah, we just don't know what the life monitor does.
yeah,
Fully agree about Fern and Tin Man though, and like that KB again. It's just we don't know that much about her as a character, the way that we do the others. But KB was the one to tell Fern like you don't have to be so mean to these kids.
yeah.
And yeah, Wim needs to use his brain more. I think Neil has found his courage. So yeah, we gotta see what KB's after. Danimaniac says, surely we won't have 2 Star Wars father figures betray their surrogate children this year. Jod just has to be better than Soul.
That is such a classic Star Wars thing, though. We see it all the time. We'll see it again.
I don't think Jod is gonna. Well, maybe I did kind of suggest it's possible that he killed all the Hatton and just took the EOPs. Maybe he is covering up a murder, but I doubt it.
I don't think Jod is going to be anywhere near as bad as Soul, or
it's also like
as messy as
all that messy. Was. Messy is a good way to put it, because I mean, Jod did attack a ship at the start of the series, throw its captain out the airlock. Like he was a pirate. He's done some bad stuff, but now that he's got the kids to warm up his little pirate heart.
Plus, I like that they had him wearing a helmet in that first bit because it feels like he's hiding behind a helmet.
Sure. He was like, throw him out the airlock, but he's crying. Like,
yeah.
I hate being so mean. Ice, thank you for the next super chats. Skeleton Crew just keeps getting better every episode. This was definitely my favorite so far. Agreed. I loved all the character development for Neil, Wim, and Fern. They're keeping the intrigue going, and I'm loving it. I really related to Fern a lot in her scene with vulnerability. Taking on responsibility also takes a toll on you, which I feel is what she was going through since she's sort of been the leader so far. I want to come back to that. Likewise, it took a lot for Wim to admit he wouldn't have gotten them as far as he had. For all his wanting to be the captain, he's admitted he might not actually be the best person for the role. I think that this about Fern being vulnerable and feeling the burden of leadership, I think that goes back to her rebellious streak. And she is at the top of her class, but she doesn't necessarily want to be, and she wants to hide it. And her mom's really proud. But if you're at the top of your class, it also means that you have to take on a larger leadership role in the community. Mm-hmm. And Fern maybe isn't sure she wants that, but maybe this whole experience is going to make her think that she can handle it, or see that she can handle it.
Yeah, I mean, she probably sees how her mother deals with things and is like, I don't want that for myself.
Yeah.
I'm not about that life, you know.
Ice also said, and Neil was amazing, surprising no one, but he really was the star of this one. I loved everything with him exploring bravery, and that ending was so abrupt, but it made me cackle, so it was perfect. You agreed with that about the ending.
Oh, that it was abrupt. It was abrupt, and that just goes back to our constant criticisms of the structure of some of the Disney Plus Star Wars episodes, that like sometimes they just end suddenly and you're like, oh, I guess that was the end, and that comes down to it feeling like it's just a movie or a mini series that's been chopped up into little pieces. But it didn't bother me. It was at the very end of the episode. I was like, that's fine. I would have preferred that we saw a little bit more of them leaving the planet and like had a little bit of an idea of like what their plan was going forward.
It's
fine.
Funny that I feel like I'm usually the one to like make that criticism about structure and everything, but this worked really well for me because this episode was so much about Neil and his arc and finding courage so that like he had his big moment, he saved his friends, and then he faded. And like once Neil is out of the story, once he's passed out, it's like, well, I guess the episode is over. So it gave me a big laugh. It really worked for me.
But yeah, it makes me wonder though, like, I guess the next episode, are we going to see Neil say goodbye to Hana? Are they just going to have left the planet? Like, I'll be curious to see how the next one starts.
Yeah. I'll be curious if they will be like, all right, we just put Neil on the ship and he's still passed out and we're taking off, or if they're going to have to make the trek from the fallen sanctum to the ship. Yeah, that'll be interesting.
I guess he did already have his goodbye with Hana after the kiss.
Yeah.
So
she did a flip and everything. Danamaniac, thank you for another super chat. Do you think they'll sprinkle stuff into this show to set up for the eventual Old Republic movie? Maybe.
I doubt it.
I also doubt it. At first, I thought that, maybe this Jewels of the Old Republic lore could be something that they use in the future. It still could be. But now that, like, we talked so much about it being like they are just a bunch of gated communities, it's just these neighborhoods that the Old Republic tried to set up. And it sounds really great. Like, come live at the Jewels of the Old Republic, but it's just propaganda.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I kind of love that idea. So if that's all it is.
Yeah. And like the planet of Aaton is known for like being this mythical treasure planet, which I love. And like people refer to it from being in children's stories and pirate songs and stuff. But if we're getting an Old Republic movie, I don't think this mythical children's story planet / gated community that was lost, I don't think that's going to play into the bigger picture of whatever story they go with telling for an Old Republic movie.
Also, the Old Republic is like 20,000 years in length. Like, it's huge.
Yeah, and there's Sith, so we have more important things to talk about.
Yeah.
Than a gated community.
So we don't know when the Jewels of the Old Republic were set up. It could have been right at the end or something. Who knows?
Yeah, it'd be fun if we got a little nod to it or like a mention of Aaton in said movie whenever we get it.
Scotty Heron, thank you for the next one. Was curious about the moment KB froze up when the Hattons first showed up. I keep wanting to say Hattons. It's Hattons, which I did. I saw someone mention the Hatfields and McCoys. Maybe the Hattons are named for the Hatfields. Anyway, curious about the KB freeze when they showed up. Was wondering if y'all thought that had significance at all. I wondered as well. Like,
I thought she may have been scanning everything with her little visor thing, and
I was wondering if she was just curious what was happening, like maybe didn't even realize they were under attack.
I think curious and not being used to having to immediately hide because you're in danger. But also like
that, I don't know,
whenever her visor is down, that's kind of already her way of hiding. So maybe she just like, oh, I got my visor down, I'm safe.
That's a good point. I like that, because we've seen her, when she is comfortable with just Fern, visor up, and then the school bullies pull up and visor down.
That's her way of hiding.
She's looking at Fuzzball at Port Borgo, visor up. This is cute. Then that droid comes after her, visor down. So her visor down is down this whole episode. So she's probably like, I'm good, I'm safe.
I'm already hidden.
And Fern's like, get over here. Yeah, if I can't see them, they can't see me. It's some real Winnie the Pooh logic.
Aw.
I says, so are we going to talk about the fact that the school of all places at Akron had a cannon on the roof? What the crip kind of school was that? I think it was probably the best place to set up defenses. And I think we're going to see exactly the same thing on Aaton.
Yeah, I think there are probably a lot of hidden things like that on Aaton that only the supervisor knows about, or only, maybe Fern's mom knows about some of that stuff. Just like, we've got a contingency plan if we're ever in danger. aka giant gun on the roof of the school.
Yeah. I definitely think we're going to see that again. If the implication is that the school on Aaton has a matching cannon, then that makes Wims moaning that it's so boring hilarious because he's been getting his education sitting under a death ray. I mean, yeah, I think that's part of Wims' journey to like not look for adventure, not force an adventure and press the green button and put all your friends in danger, but like you can find adventure where you are.
Yeah. I mean, almost every kid thinks that where they grow up is like super boring and nothing exciting happens there, you know?
Yeah. Home Run Production, thanks so much for the super chat. Says, my tinfoil hypothesis that I have no evidence for is that the planets are Jedi safe houses, and SM-33's old captain was part of the Hidden Path and was trying to protect the planets from the Empire.
Interesting.
I think
the
they're just
Empire
pirates.
Empire wasn't around back then, but
Well,
could have been some other threats.
It depends on when SM-33 and his old captain did all of this.
Oh,
but
I
get the sense. I get the sense that SM-33 is way older than the Empire.
Oh yeah. He referred to what's the planet from Andor?
Oh yeah. Oh my god.
Eldani. He referred to Eldani. According to his memory banks, Eldani was a sulfurous bog planet.
Right.
Which is essentially what a planet is when it's fairly new. Every planet is kind of a sulfurous bog planet when they are sort of new. So I like that idea that, yeah, according to SM-33's memory, Eldani is still a brand new baby planet.
And then when we see it in Andor, it's like beautiful green countryside. And yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I do think that was kind of a clue that, oh, I'm very old.
Also, just look at him.
Yeah.
He can barely stand.
Hamish K, thank you for another super chat. I think the episodes feel like chapters in a book. That is like exactly what I want episodes to feel like. And I think this one nailed it.
Well, chapters in a book is one thing, but in a chapter in a book, you can turn the page and immediately keep reading. Right. Whereas this, you got to wait till a week later to find out what happened.
I mean, this is still way better. And again, I thought this episode felt complete to me. This is far preferable to like when the Acolyte would just have like, and an attack starts and that's the end of the episode. Be like, no.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I really like the way that a lot of these episodes have started and ended, where like episode 2, it's hyperspace into Port Borgo. And then I feel like they could have done all the Port Borgo stuff in episode 2, and that it ends with them leaving in hyperspace. But then that would have made episode 3 way too short. Like if it was all Kim's moon and that's all they did. So yeah, I wonder if there's been some shuffling around of just to facilitate better run times and more consistent run times, I guess. But I don't know. It's a small criticism.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we talked about there had been rumors that there was going to be a 17-minute episode, which I don't think is true. But
I don't think that's true.
But maybe originally the episode with Kim was just going to be her on her moon, and that would have been about 17 minutes.
Yeah, that would have been way too short of an episode. But that did feel like kind of a complete little, like, we're going to go here. Jod is now fully part of the team and they've escaped. And then episode 3 would just be like, and now we're going to learn that he's not a Jedi. But it was just way too short. Lightspeed Bear, thanks for being a member of the 603rd. We've gotten a lot of stoic warrior Jedi characters on Disney+. I'm so glad this show gives us characters with a personality who can emote a lot. Yeah, watching kids is a lot of fun. Like, I know there's always a little bit of like child actors can be cringy. These are not cringy at all. Like all 4 of them have been crushing it and showing so much emotion. I love how many times they scream every episode. I always love a good Neil scream.
Yeah. I I've said it before, but I didn't realize how badly we needed a show from the perspective of kids this age until we started watching Skeleton Crew, and I was like, oh, we really needed something like this. Like, it's so fresh feeling because we haven't gotten a story from this perspective of this age group. And
It's fun for adults to watch, but I love hearing like Hello Greedo talking about how much his daughter loves it, and
Yeah.
I can't imagine having this show as a kid, like as a new Star Wars fan,
mhm.
and being like, and there's a show with kids my age and they're on an adventure. Yeah, I would have loved this.
Yeah.
Ice, thank you for another super chat. Akron gave off very World War I aesthetic to me with the ruined cities, abandoned playground, and even the gear of Hana and the Troiks. I'm really loving the way they're pulling off these vibes in Star Wars. I'm enjoying that they made a very unique planet despite it being a mirror, or the, like you said, Molly, the upside down of Aaton.
Mhm.
The fact that it can still feel very distinct was great.
Yeah, this was a way to get the kids to essentially see their planet of Aaton and see what it could be if things were really hard for them. Like, this is a wake-up call for Wim to be like, "Oh, I thought Aaton was so boring, but compared to this place, like, I don't wanna be constantly at war and have to eat this gross ration food."
Yeah, the kids on at Akron are probably like, I would love to go be bored.
Yeah.
John the Bomb, thanks for the next one. Do you think the parents will leave at Aaton?
Interesting to think about. If they learn the truth about everything, yeah, I hope they decide to leave. Maybe not permanently leave, but I hope everybody on Aaton at some point decides to take a vacation and learn about the rest of the galaxy.
Yeah, like I don't think they're gonna leave. I don't think they're gonna be allowed to leave to look for the kids. I do wonder that at the end of this whole journey, if they're like, oh, we should get out of here. And maybe not like leave forever, but like we should see what's going on in the rest of the galaxy.
I think maybe the only ones to leave after all this is said and done would be Wim and his dad. Because his dad doesn't seem happy in his job. He's sad because his wife is gone. Wim is just not having a good time.
Dying to get out.
Dying to get out and find adventure and do anything else. So I could see the two of them going on a little father-son road trip
Oh, that'd be really nice.
across the galaxy after
I would
this.
like that ending for them. I says, and how scary was SM33 in that last scene? That was terrifying. Genuinely made me move back in my seat. I didn't really feel like the kids were in any real danger, but it still made me afraid for them. Yeah, that was an appropriate amount of danger and terror for a show like
Mhm.
this, I think.
Yeah. We talked about that earlier, but when his voice changes and gets all scary sounding, I was like, oh,
Yeah.
if I were a kid, I'd be scared.
Well, with that, I think we need to wrap up because we have to get ready to go over to Resistance Broadcast. We're going to be doing their Galactic Goonies show in just a little bit. So I have this set up to redirect if you want to keep talking Skeleton Crew with us. But real quick, I'll read these last two. Thank you so much for the super chat support, everyone. Ice says, honestly, I think he was just standing up to full posture, but the way they shot it was incredible. It felt like 33 was transforming. And even then, he's a big droid, so that would be plenty scary. Danamaniac says, I hope we'll get to see through KB's visor.
Ooh, that'd be
I
cool.
am curious what she's looking at.
Mm-hmm.
And Jared Willette says, does Aaton have starships? If the supervisor is a real person, I bet they do. They probably have some like escape thing for them to get out. But I don't get the sense that they do.
I don't know. I'm kind of split on that. I think they do, but yeah, they're like hidden away, locked away, only for dire emergencies, stuff like that.
And like, I don't get the sense that parents know about them, or else they would be like, let's get some starships and go find our kids.
Yeah. And that, you know what, that makes sense too, because we were all kind of like, oh, this is weird. Everything on this planet is on the ground. Like nothing has been built up like in Coruscant. So like buildings aren't tall, no one's like getting in any ships or anything that can go further off the ground than a bike.
Right.
Be
interesting to see. I missed the parents and I missed the pirates this episode. Just like a quick check-in on what they're doing, but I'm sure we'll get that next week.
We'll get to it eventually.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, maybe the next episode, since we didn't get a cut back to the parents and at Aaton, maybe the next one will be from the parents' perspective.
Yeah. I don't want the whole episode to be like that. Just a little check-in, because I would miss the kids, but just a little, how are they doing? What are they up to?
What if we get to see Neil's parents and Neil's little brothers?
That's all you want. But what if they're crying because Neil is missing? What if they're very sad?
I want to see the credenza.
It's like a piece knocked out of it.
A Neil head-shaped crack.
That'd be great.
Be funny.
Corey's datapad. Hey, what's up? Next episode is actually Den and Grogu for some reason.
Oh no. Please no. I mean,
Well,
yes, I miss Grogu, but no.
Yeah. You'll see him again. But we have to go head out and get ready for the second stream. So tune in to Resistance Broadcast if you want to keep on talking Skeleton Crew. Otherwise, we will see you tomorrow. We'll be doing a Lego stream. I think that's it. I think that's all we have to talk about. If we don't see you before Christmas, everyone have a very happy and safe holiday. The end.
The end. Hopefully my voice is back to normal at some point.
I was going to let you say something else. And you just did the heart. So
thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.